Hi everyone. So it's been a while since my last upload of my testimony onto YouTube. Basically, I got hit pretty hard spiritually, not necessarily in a negative way, just like God interrupting and interceding in my life suddenly. Right after, I think a day or two after I uploaded the last, excuse me, it's like 11:30 right now, and I've been just putting this off, and so I'm trying to get it out. It's been a crazy weekend. Let's see. So, like the day after I posted my last video of my testimony, that portion of it, I have like 5 more videos that I already recorded, but I noticed that I forgot a few things, and so I wanted to jump on and just add like tidbits to fill you guys in on some of that. So one of the things that I realized I forgot to mention was when I was bartending, a really good friend of mine, excuse me, was bartending with me, and one thing we used to do together, which it's really hard to like admit and talk about now, is we used to do like simple spells together and like witchcraft. And so at the time, like, I think the world kind of convinces us, especially in Hollywood and Disney and stuff, that, you know, witches are cool and having magical powers would be so amazing and it's fun. And so they kind of play it off as like something innocent and fun. And so they play off witchcraft in Hollywood and like on Disney and stuff. And in real life, like, it's harmless and it's all fun and games, kind of like our celebration of Halloween, which God has testified to me does not glorify him in any way and is definitely glorifying evil and Satan. So it's so deep, and people just, you know, they want to enjoy themselves and they want to indulge in fun, exciting things. And so, you know, when someone is interfering with that, people automatically shut off and shut down, and they don't want to listen to what you have to say. But there is some truth to these things, and it is reality, and it's not a fairy tale. You know, witchcraft is very real. People use it every day, and a lot of times they don't even know what they're doing. And so we did these simple spells. I remember renting a book from the library called Simple Spells for Success, and we did some crazy stuff. Nothing like a lot of people think it's innocent if it's like white magic or you're a white witch versus like dark magic and a black witch, and there are different levels to it. And I agree, you know, intent plays a role to an extent, but you know, the Bible clearly states God will not suffer a witch to live. So I just steer clear from all of it. That doesn't exclude, you know, taking like a holistic approach to like your health. I don't feel like that, like things that back in the day, you know, when people would falsely accuse someone of being a witch because they had knowledge of like herbs and healing, I don't think that that's the same thing. And so, you would definitely have to like study yourself and do some research and pray about it. But for me, I feel like, that's not witchcraft. That's very different than like intentionally trying to alter things for personal power gain, or like love spells, things like that. Like, all of it makes my spirit like wig out. And so that's something we used to do. And I just wanted to let you guys know, that was something I was delivered from by the Most High. And, the person I did it with, we were bartenders together, and I started to pray for her and bind the magic. I didn't know at the time if it was doing any good. And then later, it's funny how God brings everything full circle. That same person ended up coming to live with me, and we ended up studying the Bible for 3 years together. So going from like doing spells and witchcraft together to like worshiping God together, which was like super beautiful thing. And it proves, that, God is real, and he does hear us, and he listens to us, and these situations are serious and they are real, and we should take it seriously, And so I just wanted to, drop that in there. And then at the same time, I ended up with an eye infection. I almost died. I don't know if I mentioned that in my last video. And when I almost died, I was in the hospital for 7 days. And, being a bartender for 3 years in a small community, I developed a lot of relationships and got really close to people. And I really genuinely felt like they were my friends, and they loved me, and they were my people. And when I was sick and in the hospital and unable to be at the bar, none of those people showed up for me at all. And I remember feeling really alone, but I realized in that moment, how fake and phony attention is, and, fake love, like in the scene of a bar or at a workplace, like when people want something like alcohol, it seems like love and it seems like friendship, but the second you remove the alcohol, people disappear. So it was a hard lesson, but God definitely put me through that for a reason. And ever since that moment that it dawned on me, the attention was addicting and it was fake love, I started to really work on that, to work on my ego and work on my addiction to attention. And it's crazy to say it out loud, but we're addicted to so many things: cigarettes, alcohol, weed, shopping, but you never think that you can be addicted to attention, but it's real. You definitely, and there's positive and negative attention, and I just think it's important to be mindful of how it affects us mentally, emotionally, and even physically, and to always keep that, at the forefront of your mind, so you don't get swept away. It's very easy to crave and become dependent on attention, just like anything else. And then, you go to great lengths to keep it or obtain it again if you lose it. Kind of like the scenario or the syndrome of like washed up like musicians and things. You get popular from one song, and then how long does it last? You know what I mean? And those people are considered washed up after that, and it's super depressing. Like, I would never even want to go through that. Like, if I had to come out on the other end feeling like nothing and nobody because I was only popular for a short amount of time, and then feeling like you always have to live up to that, like, that to me seems like a complete nightmare, and I just can't imagine. And I've had a passion for music and art and a lot of different things, dancing, and as much as I would love to be creative, it's a passion of mine to really just work with music and work with words. I enjoy it so much, and it's a lot of fun. But the things that come with it, you really have to take all of that into consideration, because you may open a door that you can't close, and something you may not realize that you don't want. And so it's important to be prepared. And there was this quote I remember Oprah had said, if you don't know who you are before you come into money, it will define you. And so, not that money's the goal, but I feel like God has really been working inside me to help me develop my character and my mind and my spirit, so that I'm standing on 2 solid feet on the ground, and I know who I am. Because if you don't have a grasp on that to some degree before people get a hold of you, it definitely can be detrimental in so many ways. So I just wanted to touch on, the deliverance from witchcraft and the addiction to attention, and just always like checking my ego and checking in with God. Like, God what's the motivation for this decision or this thought or this idea? Is it coming from a place of my ego? Am I trying to benefit from this? Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not perfect, and I still make mistakes, and I've made a lot of mistakes before I ever got to that point that, I haven't ever gone back to completely reconcile. But I am listening, and I am learning from my past. And so I think it's just super important to check in with God constantly about those things, to make sure you're mentally and emotionally in the right place. Your motivation is correct. Okay, so the other thing, so when I did end up getting like addicted to cocaine and like all these other drugs, and was like crazy drinking and doing crazy things, 2 things about that that I think are worth mentioning. One is my father had just passed away, and so everybody deals with grief so many different ways, and mine was like, I just want to forget about it and escape. And so a lot of people might notice in town where I'm from that we've lost a lot of close family and friends over the years, and I haven't made it to very many funerals. I don't deal well with death at all. I don't deal well with it at all. In the past, it would send me on a downward spiral into addiction. And a lot of times when you go to funerals and things, everybody's mourning together, and then there's more of a temptation to drink or go reminisce or go party. And I just literally cannot put myself in those situations, because it's been so detrimental to me in the past. So like, it's literally not out of disrespect for the person or their family. I just have to be mindful all of the time about putting myself in tempting situations, because of the way that I handled like my father's death. It's just so easy to numb things and escape, and I can't afford to do that in my life at this point. So I've made, some tough decisions to just isolate and keep to myself and stay out of the mix. But It's definitely not because I'm not affected by it, and not because I'm not in pain, or that I don't have respect for that person or their family. So, that was part of the reason why I did all of those things. And another thing I did during that time is I was dating a woman. I was quite a bit younger, and I've had girlfriends on and off throughout my life, and it was a struggle for me. I was molested when I was 5 by a woman, and so I've always kind of been confused about my sexuality, and I've really struggled with that. And when I was dating this woman, we had a great connection. But the second I would sit down with her and my daughter would be like in between us, like I felt so uncomfortable. Like this just did not feel right or set right in my spirit. And I remember feeling like very squeamish and uncomfortable in those situations. And as much as that was what I was choosing at the time, I didn't feel like it was for me. And, over time, I started to just pay attention to how that situation made me feel. Not just, behind closed doors, but like all of the time. And I wasn't comfortable. It made me really uncomfortable, being in a relationship with a woman publicly and all of that. And so I started to pray and kind of, search my own spirit, mind, soul, to just kind of get to the bottom of where that was coming from. Am I really in love with this person? Is this something I really want for the rest of my life? Or is it just a phase? Or what's really going on here? And so, I feel like I was directly connected to what had happened to me at a young age. And if that hadn't happened, I might not feel that way towards women. So I started really thinking about that and just rebuking it. And with over time, especially since I've been sober, which is crazy. I just posted about this, being of sober mind is super critical in hearing and being close and feeling God. And a lot of people miss that. He brought us into this world completely pure and sober and undefiled and not numb, to our surroundings and our feelings and our thoughts and things like that. And we numb ourselves so much these days. And so, I think, when he told, was it Paul or Peter? Paul, be of sober mind. These are instructions if you become a bishop. But I thought to myself, why aren't we all striving to be like a bishop? If there's any high-ranking position in the church, we should all be holding all of ourselves accountable and up to that standard, I feel like. If that person can be closer to God by doing these things, then we can be closer to God by doing these things. And so regardless of your position in the church, your position with the Most High, I think we should all be holding ourselves to those standards, and being of sober mind makes sense to me. It's just, everything is just clearer, and it makes sense that he would want us to be of sound mind and clear. When you start stimulating depressives, uppers, suppressants, whatever, it definitely affects your decision-making skills and your ability to reason. And I just think that he really was saying something with that. And I feel like that has been the number one factor of my closeness with God, is being sober, being of sober mind. almost all of the time. I have a glass of wine here and there. I'm human. I am not perfect. I've had hard liquor, you know, here and there. Like maybe twice a year, if that. Not a lot. I haven't like partied, you know, crazy, hungover, grinding and stuff like in so many years. And like, I just can't even imagine doing that. But, excuse me, I'm so tired. I can't get this out. And so I just wanted you guys to know that I think being of sober mind is super important, and just wanted to add those tidbits. Oh yeah, when I got baptized in the Christian church in Bend, right after that I had a dream, and so I'm one of those people, like, I sleep like a rock. I never remember my dreams, ever. I never remember them. So if I remember a dream, it's important. I had some crazy dreams in the last 6 years. So this dream, I was in this giant pool, in this, like, it was all made out of, like, not porcelain, ceramic, white ceramic, and there were, like, these beams, like pillars, and there was a staircase, like a balcony, and then a staircase, or like 2 staircases, and all these beams, like, around this giant pool of water. It was circular, and there were waves going in the pool, and there were demons up at the top of the balcony, and they had these giant marble balls, like giant, of glass, and they were throwing them in this pool. I'm swimming in the pool, and they're throwing them in this pool, and there's waves from them, you know, throwing these giant marble balls into the pool. And they kept saying, "Stay away from the temple." It was so confusing. And I had never been to a Mormon church before this. I've never been to a temple. I've never seen pamphlets, talked to anybody, never been inside any buildings within the Mormon vicinity at all at this point. And I told my friend Jen, and I said that in my last testimony post, you know, that I went to my friend Jen and talked to her about, you know, my disappointment after being baptized. And it was right around that same time that I had this dream, and I told her about the dream, and she literally went into her room, and this was part of the reason I started going to the Mormon church too. And she pulls out this pamphlet of the baptismal room in the temple, and it looks identical to what was in my dream, and it was crazy. And her and I both just, like, we had chills, and we were just completely amazed and in awe by this situation, because there's just no way I would have ever been able to have known that. So to have a dream like that, and, you know, and it be so spot on, I felt like that was directly coming from God. Excuse me. Okay. I think that was it as far as tidbits that I missed in my testimony, because the next several videos just jump right into, like, the next parts of my testimony. And so I just didn't really break down and get into detail. I was trying to get through it quickly, but I feel like these specific things were important to my testimony and how amazing God is. Another thing, sorry. When I did get the eye infection and I was going into the hospital, I was getting ambulanced to Bend. My boyfriend at the time, his mom went to church, like, faithfully, and he had told me my mom went to her prayer group and they're praying for you. This was like my near-death experience. Like, I almost died, and it was so crazy. And I remember being in the ambulance and just being in so much pain. And it's kind of a blur. I don't remember a lot, but I do remember him saying that to me, and it was profound, you know. Just the thought of, you know, women praying for me in my time of need really touched my soul in that moment. And I think that did, you know, have an effect on all of the sequence of events that happened after that. And there were a couple other things with him too that, you know, about God. And it's like in the moment, I don't know if you've ever had moments where you're like, just like completely like hyper focused on somebody. Like when you think back in your past, like there have been moments where somebody will say something. And I remember in that moment feeling like your spirit almost is like, what did you say? What did you just say? Like, wait a minute, what did you say? And there was this conversation we had with a friend of his. Now, him and his friend, you know, love to just get wasted, and we had a lot of fun together, all of us. And so I used to try to keep up with them and drink a lot with them. So we were always partying then. I was like really young, like 24, 23. I was really young. And so, excuse me, we were living it up, you know, partying. And so at this time, like I had no desire, no real relationship with God. And so, but when I think back on it, it's like, whoa, that was kind of crazy. So we're all hanging out, and the gentleman who my boyfriend's best friend tells us that his ex-wife, who he had been together with for like 10 years since high school, one day came to him and said, God told me that I need to leave you. And I remember my boyfriend telling me this and smiling ear to ear and just like chuckling, like so like enamored by this suggestion, you know, from God to leave her husband or her boyfriend or whatever. And he's just like, I remember the look on his face, and he was just like, God told her to leave him. You know, like, yeah, right. And I remember like in my spirit looking at like just like studying him and looking at him and hyper focused on him in that moment when I think back. And I remember thinking to myself quietly, I didn't say anything, but you know, she's not lying. That was right. Like, I don't know. It was super weird. Like, like it's not funny. It wasn't funny to me. I didn't laugh, you know, and it's weird because it's like your spirit already knows so many things before you know them. And so when I think back of these situations where people were talking about God and you're just like, wait, what? Like and then you fast forward like 7 years later and you're just like so committed and devoted to God and you have this solid relationship with him, and you just think back and you're just like, wow, you know, had I known you then, the things I may have said in that moment, or, you know, how it may have impacted me and given me the ability to like impact the people around me. If I knew then what I know now, you know? But I do remember like my spirit being super intrigued by the suggestion that God would tell somebody, you know, this is not your person, or that God would tell somebody anything, because at that point in my life, I couldn't hear God's voice, and I had no idea that was even real or possible. And so I saw it was such a beautiful thing, even then, before I ever knew him. So I don't know, I just wanted to share those little tidbits on my journey as I've grown closer to God. You know, I feel like those things are important and really solidify part of my testimony. So I just leave this with you in the name of Jesus Christ and pray that it blesses somebody. Thanks. Have a good night.